Let me ask a question about Pakistan, since you mentioned it, Ambassador. As Americans...
Well, you wrote the book. I should be asking you.
Well, the whole point of the book was to listen to people, so I'm going to continue listening. Thank you. As Americans know well, billions of dollars in non-military aid is being directed at Pakistan. Some of it is being spent, some of it is waiting to be spent. A considerable amount of it is spent without high-profile involvement of the United States government. Things just happen. Hopefully they happen, and people may be told that they are being done by the Pakistani government. I understand why that is. You want to support the Pakistani government. But this is my question. Couldn't you lay out the hypothesis that the opposite is happening? That we, the United States, with our billions of dollars, are enabling an incompetent government and getting no credit for whatever it is we do spend?
First, remember some recent history. We've managed our relationship with Pakistan in a variety of different ways. We've tried sanctions after the withdrawal of the Soviets. That didn't work so well for us. It paved the road to 9/11.
Right.
And has created a profound and enduring distrust among Pakistanis concerning our reliability as an ally. In terms of our assistance, I would therefore suggest it's important for us to continue it, to have certain expectations, but not to have any or else's, because it simply harks back to the days of the Presser Amendment and total sanctions. How we administer it, I firmly believe on the civilian side should be in a manner that strengthens institutions in Pakistan, as well as bringing good things to the Pakistani people. How we take credit for it, I think, in an intelligent fashion and in partnership. During the time I was there, it was the awful 2005 Kashmir earthquake that killed 80,000 Pakistanis in 2 minutes. We mounted the largest and longest sustained airborne relief effort since the Berlin airlift. And we did so very visibly with American flag decals on the sides of CH-47 Chinook helicopters. The Pakistanis knew it was the Americans who were doing this. And at no time was our popularity greater than at that time. We were also very careful to coordinate everything we did with the Pakistani government, civilian and military. So they got credit as well. And I think there is a way to blend these two. We don't want to be invisible. I don't think it serves our interest or Pakistani's interests. Nor do we want to be seen as the sole benefactor, and were it not for us, an inept government would produce nothing. So it's a combination of the two.
Counterintuitive question, but does it matter if the money is wasted? Is it important to spend it wisely or just to spend it?
Clearly, it's important to spend it as wisely as possible, bearing in mind that in states such as Pakistan, if you're going to achieve those political objectives, which is developing institutions and giving institutions responsibility, you're going to give up some control and accountability. And you just have to find what the right balance for that is.
Give up some accountability, meaning you have to accept that some of it will be wasted, and that's just the way, it is.
Look, we have got the most dedicated, sophisticated, and numerous sets of inspectors general, I think, that modern history has ever seen. Special inspector generals, USAID inspector generals, state inspector generals, DOD inspector generals, the GAO, and on we go. They keep a pretty tight eye on this. Yet I have found, talking to senior inspectors, that they understand that if this is to succeed, it can't simply be a bean counting effort. It has to produce a policy result. I would equate this to what I just said about security. Good inspectors general, and we've got some very good ones now, understand that we're spending money to achieve a political goal. And that means dealing with those funds in a way that might not be the way you deal with relief for Hurricane Sandy. It doesn't mean you waste it or that you turn a blind eye, but that there is more to this than simply accounting for every penny. You're developing institutions and you're developing relations, and again, you've got to balance the two.
Two questions, Ambassador, and I'm going to get people, let people get back to their conversations. First, I want to follow up on something. You alluded to your hope that there would be people on the ground in Syria, without regard to whether there may be now, but your hope that there would be. Do you favor a broader U.S. intervention in Syria?
Again, you know, I've learned a very few things in my long career. You know, one of them is be careful what you get into. So you've got to understand the dynamics of the Syrian rebellion. You know, who are those guys? What do they stand for? Who's behind them? Who's against them? Pretty hard to do that from long distance. I think you've got to be on the ground, as we have been in Libya, both analyzing and influencing. I am not sure we know enough. And I have to say, after the Doha conference, I'm not exactly reassured that...
this was the Syrian opposition
right,
meeting. Yeah.
You know, that we have a clear address to pursue a policy of coordinated, cohesive, and effective assistance. Humanitarian, yes, by all means. But if we're considering going beyond that, we need to know a lot more than we do, in my view, before we make those decisions.
So could be the right thing, but we don't have the information.
Well, that's my sense of it. You know, we think of Afghanistan. We were out to defeat the Soviets by any means possible. We'd arm anybody who would use those arms against the Soviets. And again, you know, we helped therefore create not only the vicious Afghan civil war, but also the Taliban and ultimately Al-Qaeda.
That maybe leads to the final question, Ambassador. I was thinking of something that Abraham Lincoln once wrote in a letter, and I'll have to paraphrase it here. He said something to the effect of, "I confess plainly that I have not controlled events, but that events have controlled me." Let me ask that about the Middle East and the broader region. Are we, as the United States, in any way in control of events, or are events in control of us?
I would rephrase that slightly, with all due respect, both to President Lincoln and to NPR. What is the region in control of? And what do regional partners think? What is their analysis? What are their recommendations? You know, this is the most tumultuous time in the Middle East in 60 years, since the revolutions of the 1950s, yet it's the mirror image of those revolutions. When the monarchies fell to the new Republican forces, so-called. This time around, it is those republics of the 50s who are giving way to yet new revolutionary forces, while the monarchies are holding pretty firm and fast. Well, why don't we have a conversation? You know, how do they think we should proceed? What do they think is happening and why? Because ultimately it's not for us to follow the British and the French model of seeking to control events in the Middle East. It is for us to understand what is developing in the Middle East, to identify those forces that are seeking stability and security, who will broadly align with our interests, if not serve as our allies, because that can be dangerous too, to them and to us, and then to act on that basis. But for us to think that we are the ones who should decide how events should go and how we can direct and control them, I think is a sense, in a very important sense, a form of neo-imperialism that will bring us no good, nor any good to the region.
Well, it's interesting. You got home just in time for a very exciting election. Perhaps you heard something about it.
I understand there was one.
Yes. and you got to hear some of our national political debate on this side. Did you sense when you got home that people understood that complexity that you just laid out?
Well, since the whole broad range of foreign policy issues was largely absent from the campaign, including the debates, including the debate on foreign policy.
The economy is a national security issue, sir. No, sorry. Please go ahead.
I think it's be a little bit difficult to expect if the candidates and the campaigns are not dealing with these issues in a detailed and forthright way. It's a little hard to expect the American population to have a nuanced grasp of what's at stake here.
Ambassador, thank you for your nuanced grasp of the issues, and thanks for this discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.